Welcome back to the Jungle Fever podcast. I'm Ethan Sargent. Nate Crowley is here alongside me. It is April the 6th of 2026. It is officially draft month. We are a little over 20 days until the NFL draft gets rolling from Pittsburgh. It is an exciting time. The Bengals are meeting with plenty of young prospects right now, getting the lay of the land on some of these very talented players. It is a unpredictable, as we've discussed, a very unpredictable top of this draft. Really want to get past pick one, and most people assume that will be Fernando Mendoza of Indiana to the Las Vegas Raiders. This draft could go a whole lot of different ways, and the Bengals could do a whole lot of different things with that 10th overall pick. But we're going to start off today not talking about the draft. We're going to get to the draft in a little bit, but we've got some new signings for Cincinnati, including a guy that hurt them pretty badly last year, who is
Yeah,
now
they love
in
to do that.
stripes. We don't have to discuss that all that much, but Kyle Duggar is a Bengal, the safety corner linebacker hybrid, I guess. He's played a little bit everywhere. Um, Comes over from Pittsburgh. He was traded there. Virtue, he was in New England for the start of his career, was a former second round pick. Um, has had his ups and his downs in the NFL, but I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway with this signing is it's just a body and it's a versatile body, right? I think this is somebody that Al Golden's going to trust to play in a lot of different spots. He brings a lot of experience to this Bengals roster, this Bengals defense that, again, like we've talked about, is still very young and very much in a growing pains portion, as we saw early last year. So, yeah, and like we said, we can talk. This will be the last time we discuss it. Had a pick six on Joe Flacco last year in the win that Pittsburgh had in Acrisure Stadium in meeting number two between the Bengals and the Steelers this year.
He also had another splash play against the Bengals. Can you think of what it was?
He had I know exactly which play you're talking about. It's the play that kept the Bengals out of the playoffs in 2024 from back in week number one,
Hmm.
Patriots versus the Bengals. Tanner Hudson streaking
Yep.
towards the end zone.
Yep.
Uh, Scores probably a touchdown 99 out of 100 times, but Duggar makes a great play, punches the ball out from the back. Patriots recover the fumble, and the Patriots end up winning the game by three. So, and the Bengals end up missing the playoffs by one spot.
Yep. But the Bengals love to do this, where like guys who perform well against them, they'll turn around and sign in free agency. They have a knack for doing that. I really, really enjoy this signing. This feels very low risk, and a potential high reward. He played well in Pittsburgh during his time. And like you mentioned, it's a different style of versatility that you have with a guy like Kyle Duggar. You think about who the versatility, the Swiss Army knife kind of guys on defense that they currently have. You think of like Dax Hill and his ability to switch from slot to outside corner. Duggar, he's able to play completely different positions, and he has at certain points in his career. Like you mentioned, he has played safety, he has played the slot, he has even lined up at linebacker a couple times. So I really like the signing. I think he has a chance to be an impact player for this team. And like you mentioned, he's also 30. He brings a little bit more experience to that group that desperately needs it. And overall, just I guess I'm kind of glowing. I feel good about it. I mean, I feel as good for a rotational kind of veteran piece that you can add. I feel about as good for that kind of signing as I can with something like this. I feel like this is a great signing for the
And
Bengals.
that's exactly what I think this is. I think a lot of Bengals fans were kind of like pulling at strings a little bit and saying, "Oh, well, this takes them out of downs and this takes them out of anything else." I don't. I actually heavily disagree with that. I don't think that this will dissuade them from taking Caleb Downs at all, should that be an option for them at pick number 10. In fact, I think that Duggar, when you look at this contract, it's a 1 year, $2.1 million deal, incentive laden. That's a backup contract. That's a contract for a guy who's going to be fighting for safety three or slot safety or excuse me, slot corner or wherever they want to put him. That's not a starter contract, right? They gave Brian Cook a starter contract for reference. So, there's a lot. Again, I'm right with Ayden on this. I think that this is a great signing in terms of boosting the floor of this defense, right? Last year, when you got poor play from Geno Stone and from Jordan Battle at times as well, they didn't get safeties. We don't watch practice every day. We don't see what these guys are seeing on a weekly basis. So, when people were clamoring for Dijon Anthony, for example, or Tyson Anderson, who's now in Denver, maybe they weren't, actually, I won't even say maybe, I'll say most likely they weren't showing enough in practice to earn those reps in the games. And Dijon Anthony dealt with injuries as well. So, having a guy like Duggar to be able to um, come in and be able to play off the jump. He actually played 96% of Pittsburgh's snaps from when he was traded. So there is a real starter level experience there. Now, he was 82nd out of 98 graded safeties. That is an upgrade on Geno Stone, but it's still not great, right? So again, it's okay in terms of that, but that's all it needs to be. At this point, we're almost a month now removed from the initial wave of free agency. We're not, you're not going for these top end guys, and that'll take us to this next player that the Bengals signed, Jasir Taylor, which is a very similar vein. I think this one is even more focused towards special teams, right? When you lose a guy like Tyson Anderson, who is a very, very good gunner, one of the best in the league, in fact, you need a quick guy to replace him. I think Jasir Taylor will be that guy. Was in Los Angeles with the Chargers for a while. I think he's got an instant role on special teams, and then I think he could very well be in that mix for that CB3 position, which we've kind of talked about a little bit, Ayden, as kind of being a kind of open battle as of now. They re-signed Jalen Davis. He'll be in that mix. There very well could be a draft pick in this mix when it's all said and done. And now you add Jasir Taylor in. You've got Josh Newton too. So there's a lot of bodies in this room. But Jasir Taylor just adds another, I think, important body to that area of the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's not someone who blows you away. He has 12 starts in his career, 65 career regular season games that he's played in. He's 76 tackles, one TFL, 15 deflections and a pick. So like solid, but like you mentioned, he's not moving the needle at all. This is a depth add. Um, I still feel like they could stand to try and get more of an impact guy at corner. As for that CB3 spot, I think it's important. I don't think you feel very comfortable rolling a guy like Fig Newton out there based off of what he put on tape last year, which was not good at all. But I think the Bengals understand that that's where they need to be. That's why they brought a guy like this into the building to have that sort of battle royale and kind of see who comes out on top and kind of hope
Kind of like
iron
guard
over
last
iron.
year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so that's the hope, right? Um, I wouldn't be shocked based off of kind of how stuff has fallen if they lean corner with pick 10, if that's how the board falls. I think in an ideal world they want to go edge again, just based off of where they sit from a team composition standpoint. I still think that's where they probably need the most help, that and linebacker. But I think they're kind of geared up to have a sort of battle royale this summer.
And again, I think what these moves also kind of tell me is that there are some moves that I think they're going to make post draft. Like I don't think they're done in free agency.
Mhm.
And obviously, again, a lot of that will be determined based off of what happens in the NFL draft. So, for example, let's say the first three rounds are, let's say they go Downs, let's say they go Lee Hunter in round two, and then let's say they go like a receiver in round three, right? That means that they have a safety, defensive tackle, and a receiver in the first three rounds, right? I think, a pretty standard mock for a lot of Bengals fans. I think that's something that's feasible. Then they'd still have that. But even if they take a linebacker on day three, which they have shown a real likeness to do in the past, they probably will still want that vet linebacker presence. Do they think that Duggar could play down there in that spot? I don't know. Do they think that, I mean, when you look at the free agent linebackers out there, I mean, you got Bobby Wagner, who is, obviously not quite what he used to be, but is still very much an experienced presence, still in about as good a physical shape as you could be for a linebacker at 36 years old. Do they go somewhere else in that direction? And then, and that's all the thing, because if they draft Sonny Styles, then they don't really need to do that. So there's so many different aspects and
I would
ways that this
bet
draft could fall.
I would bet a lot of money on the Bengals drafting a linebacker at some point in the draft.
Hmm.
There will be a
Such a good draft for it.
linebacker
We've
off the
talked
board.
about it at length. There's
Yes.
a boatload of talent at that position, off ball, on ball, all sorts of different types of linebackers. The Bengals have plenty of options. And remember, they doubled up last year in what was not such a great linebacker class. So, I do still think there will be a linebacker on this year's board simply because just the wealth of talent. Especially if the Bengals feel like they're in a spot to take the best player available, there's going to be a couple spots where the linebacker might be the best player available, including at pick number 10, if Sonny Styles happens to be there.
Yep, I've laughed a little bit just because the notion of Bengals and best player available is always funny to me because that's never how they draft, but that's how they should draft. But yeah, speaking of best players available, there's a really good player potentially available with Dexter Lawrence.
Mm.
There's
Yeah.
who,
Just came out a couple hours
yeah,
ago.
Adam
He
Schefter
is
reporting he requested a trade. Doesn't necessarily shock me too much. I mean, obviously, the Giants are just kind of in a weird spot where it feels like they're going in the right direction, but obviously Dexter is someone who's in his prime right now and playing the best. And you think about the amount of talent that they have on that defensive line. Does he necessarily? I feel like he kind of wants to be the alpha in that situation. He wants to be the guy. And he's been looking for a contract for about two
yeah,
years at this point. And then now they have a new regime come in and John Harbaugh, and maybe they don't necessarily see eye to eye on long-term stuff. And he's like, I
yeah.
want out. Now, with all that being said, I feel like the Bengals should pick up the phone. This feels like a hey, call, see what's up, and see what the kind of vibe is because this is somebody who completely transforms your defense one single player. This is a Duke talks all the time about being win now. This is a win now move. That's how good
Apparently,
Dexter
the
Lawrence is.
price might not even be a first round pick, allegedly. Now, the question is you'd have to pay him. You have to pay him a whole lot of money. But
Right.
Dexter Lawrence is absolutely worth that kind of money. And that's, I think, the big impasse here with him in New York is that the money is clearly on two very different tiers. So I think absolutely, I'm right with you. This is a game changer, right? Even with the add of Jonathan Allen, even with BJ Hill in the fold, you bring in Dexter Lawrence, and all of a sudden this Bengals D
Head
line
and
looks
shoulders better than
ferocious.
those two combined. Like,
Exactly. No,
yeah,
1,000%. Right.
yeah.
And you get Dexter Lawrence, who, by the way, was college teammates with T. Higgins. And you say, stop this great defensive tackle, and then you have the mutant out on the edge. And then what's that is that Shamar's nickname, the mutant?
No, no, that's
Or is that
Murphy.
Murphy?
It's a Murphy. That's his nickname.
I don't know. They're all mutants. They're all athletic
Well,
freaks.
yeah, yeah.
Just
So in the
somebody's gonna
flag
get
football
home.
game, in the Pro Bowl game, T. Higgins scores a touchdown. What dance move does he do?
They're all sexy Dexy.
He hits the
Yeah.
sexy Dexy. It makes you think. They talk at those things. Now, well, do I expect it to happen? Absolutely not, because that is just not in the Bengals' MO. But I don't know. I just wanted to throw a feeler out there because I just picture what he would
I
do
think
to.
I would send what pick do we have? 41, something like that. I'd throw that pick in a heartbeat. I would throw that pick, probably another pick as well. And then yeah, you'd have to pay him, but they
I
can.
would throw 10. I would. I think he's that
I don't know
good.
if I'd throw 10. But
I think he's probably the
it,
best defensive tackle in football.
yeah, yeah, I think so. I
So
don't
I'm
yeah.
okay with that. I'm okay. Like, what are the odds that at pick 10 that it's the player that Dexter Lawrence is right now? That's
Yeah.
kind of that's what those are the conversations when these trades do go down. You have to kind of ask yourself is like, do you project a guy that you're taking right now to be as good or potentially better than a guy like Dexter Lawrence? And then you think about the contract situation, the money, all that kind of stuff. That all plays into it as well.
That's
But
why I just don't. That part is why I don't think I'd give up 10. That's just the contract and the money, the fifth year option that the first round pick has. I think that's why I wouldn't give up 10. Now I would give up 41 and more and then sign him. But I think what will end up happening, this is more NFL than Bengals, but I think a team lower down in the draft, I think the Giants are going to look to try and target like the late 20s if it does happen. Try and get a pick in that late first round and then potentially trade him. Or they could just work it out and resign him, which if I'm the Giants, I probably try to do because he's a pretty good football player. So
and you feel like you're on the right track. in New York. You do. You
Hmm.
feel like you're kind of working that
If they
way.
can stay healthy, they have some
Right.
pieces. Dart showed some flashes. Scadaboo showed some flashes. The defense is solid. They've got some great building blocks there. It's just, you
Hmm.
know, they need to try and find a way to keep everybody healthy, number one, because they were ravaged by injuries last year. And number two, to maybe try and sign one of your best players to a deal that reflects how good he is. I don't know. Am I talking crazy? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, again, if I'm the Bengals, I do pick up the phone, but we know how they
Watch like
operate.
Chicago make a move for him. Like just a
Yeah,
little
they gotta be all over that. They actually, Chicago's defensive tackle right now is former Bengal, Andrew Billings.
bit. Hmm.
So, and Jermon Dexter, who's also pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking for the Bengals on that part. A couple other visit stuff, little things here and there. A big one came down today. Jeremiah Love is coming to town this week. We talked about this a lot last week about how, what if he's kind of there at 10. We talked about that a little bit when there was at Notre Dame's Pro Day, which was going on pretty much as we were recording last week. There was a conversation between a Bengal scout and Jeremiah Love, and now he is coming on a top 30 visit. So clearly there's a
Do
little
all the
interest
memes.
there,
Get all the memes out. All the
right?
non-Bengals fans that are just gonna rip them for even taking the visit with them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the Bengals are
Well,
taking a
like
running back
I
visit.
keep seeing
They're
people
all
like
gonna come.
rip. Like I saw the like April Fool's Day was this past week, and I kept seeing jokes about Bengals O line. Like people just don't watch football anymore. Like the line was not the issue last year.
Right. Right.
I don't really understand. Like it was funny a few years ago when it was bad, but they're not. It's not a bad line anymore. I don't know. So again, I'm all in. If Love is there at 10,
I-
it would be a great pick.
we're on
I
the same page. We're on the same
yeah,
page.
I think you think about just
I,
take a second.
walk down this
Close
road with us. Walk
close
down
your
this
eyes.
road.
If you're a Bengals fan watching this, take a second. Maybe grab a nice drink of water, close your eyes for 30 seconds, and imagine week one. I don't even know. Let's just say that because they always seem to start with a visual game. Let's imagine they're in Pittsburgh to start the
Baltimore
season off.
for the tray
Maybe
beat.
they do that. Let's do that. They're in Baltimore week one, M&T Bank Stadium. It's going nuts. It's a great stadium, great fans. They're going crazy. Bengals get the ball to start the game. Here's the starting offense that's rolling onto the field. Joe Burrow, Jeremiah Love, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki, the seventh ranked offensive line in terms of pass blocking.
Chase Brown is RB2.
Chase Brown is still hanging around at RB2. Andre Yosevas. I mean,
Good
there's
luck.
uh,
And guess what,
you.
Trey? Jeremiah Love's running right at you, bro. He's running right at you.
I mean, you tell me, right? You tell me how to stop that. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So that again, I'm all over that. If that's what it ends up being, I'm thrilled. I think most Bengals fans would be thrilled. And there would be a small, like, I will say this. There will be a small sect of Bengals fans that will lose their collective marbles because we didn't pick a defensive player. And the national media will lose their collective marbles. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. The first take on Friday morning and get up football and all that, it'll be why didn't they take defense? Player X, player Y was on the board. But they went Jeremiah Love. It's the same thing as Jamar Chase. Look how that one worked out, right? I think it's a win now move. Take a Jeremiah Love at 10 would be a win now move, and I don't think it's as unfeasible as a lot of people might think.
So when the conversation was going down between Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell, and listen, they both turned out to be great, right? So
Yep,
that's
none of
first
that's
things
a
first.
slight on Panay. He's a great
No,
football
no,
player.
no, no. But I was full on Team Jamar because
So was I.
those
Yeah.
guys are just different in their X factors and they're at positions. Obviously, Penei Sewell is an X factor at a position that is incredibly important, but Jamar is. They might both be Hall of Famers. So it's tough to make this comparison. But Jamar is a Hall of Famer that might go down as one of the greatest wide receivers ever if he keeps going on the track that he's going. And not saying that that's what Jeremiah Love will be, but that's what Jeremiah Love could potentially be based off of what he's shown. I mean, he's a difference maker and an X factor and someone who completely changes your franchise. And I think that's why they're having conversations about having a running back go that high. And then you get him in a system that is already extremely efficient, that is already built to win, and it has, in my opinion, a Super Bowl level offense. I don't think anybody will try and critique you with that when they talk about the Bengals. It is a Super Bowl caliber offense. You drop somebody like that into it, it's like Mentos with Coke. It just blows up. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I'm here for it. But this is why you do your homework before you get to the draft, because then you can look at the board and just take the best player available because you don't have holes going into the draft. But the Bengals don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, so the interesting, the interesting situation that could potentially arise is if Love ends up being there at pick number 10, but a couple other of those big defensive players are also there at 10. That could be where you get some really, really fun, you could get that Bengals war room might be real, real intense for a few minutes.
I
Between Sal Golden, Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin and company. I
Yeah.
can only imagine those conversations. Yeah,
I'll throw it out
he's
there.
visiting.
I
He's
don't think
visiting
Jeremy.
today. I did not realize he's visiting today. He'll
Yeah.
be in Cincinnati today.
Just to put it out there, I don't think Jeremiah Love's going to be there at 10. So, but the
I
conversation is fun to
think
have.
I
The
think New
exercise.
Orleans at 8 is a very realistic possibility for him.
I think the Chiefs
Yeah.
at 9 is the absolute floor for
I just
him.
can't see Kansas City taking him anymore after they just paid Walker all this money. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
that doesn't feel very Kansas City like. It feels like they'll go get a good defensive player, right? They had their plenty of defensive struggles last year, or they could go O-line because they've had some issues at tackle. So, like, if one of the two tackles, whether it's Fano or Mayalga, whoever they like better is there, I think that could also be a landing spot for an O tackle. I'd much rather the Chiefs go tackle. I'd be cool with that. Because then, that probably the one position. I mean, the Bengals could maybe go Mayalga, who could kick inside, but I don't really think. I think that's pretty low on the Bengals' priority of positions right now, especially with them just re-signing Orlando Brown Jr. a couple weeks ago to a contract extension. In terms of some other visits, they did meet virtually with a guy you mentioned last week, Ayden, San Diego State cornerback Chris Johnson. This guy's a burner. He is quick.
I'll let you get through this list. I just wanted to say, were
No,
we?
I think there aren't a ton of other guys that I've seen more recently. I know they did meet with Sonny Styles in the past week. I believe that was a virtual meeting. Couple other little ones that here and there. I'm just kind of looking through here, kind of seeing in terms of if there's any big guys that I missed. I don't really see a ton. If you have any, let me know, Aiden. But
No,
uh,
I haven't. All I wanted to say was, were we? I can't remember. Were we talking when the D'Angelo Pons pro day stuff came out,
I think
or
so.
no?
I'm not sure if we
Okay.
discussed it, but that's another. We
Okay.
did discuss Ponds. I know
Yeah,
that.
right. Which I think my stance on Pons is still the same, but like, oh my gosh, he balled. He balled out in his pro day. He looked really
I
good.
think Ponds is a first round pick if he's not 5'7".
Right, that's the
He's just
problem.
5'7".
Yep. Yep. So that was just somebody that like popped into my head as we were talking because again, that's he popped. All of the measurables is what you need as far as like the 40 time and that stuff, not the measurables in terms of height and weight, but the other stuff that you look at, really good. So
There are a few other names. I've got the list now of some other guys that they've met with over the last week or so that we didn't talk about last week. Nate Borkacher, tight end from Texas A&M. They met with him at his pro day. They met with another. We talked about Jake Golday last week. They also met with Jack Dingle, who's an inside linebacker for the University of Cincinnati. They met with CJ Donaldson, who was a running back at Ohio State, was kind of like their goal line guy. I think he'll be a fullback in the NFL, not a running back. Kind of just that bruiser, like over 220 pounds, got that big physical frame, formerly West Virginia, then transferred to Ohio State last year. They talked to, I think we briefly mentioned this last week, but I'll say it again, Romello Height, the defensive end out of, that stacked Texas Tech defensive front from last year. This is a guy we have discussed, and now they've met with him. Emmanuel McNeil Warren out of Toledo. We talked about how this guy's just an athletic monster. Tore up his pro day, is going to measure extremely well. Very well could be a Bengal prospect. Probably not a Big Ten guy, but if he slides a little bit, maybe the Bengals look to move up. I think he'll be either late round one, maybe early round two. I think if he slides to like 35 or 6, maybe the Bengals might try and move up for him if they don't go with Caleb Downs at pick number 10. And then they did meet with another guy, a guy who kind of fell off the radar in college football a little bit this past year. Jaden Ott was a big story at Cal a couple of years ago, had some really big performances for them. Transfers to Oklahoma, didn't really work out for him in his senior season there for the Sooners. So he's still a good prospect. I think most people will be watching his Cal film as opposed to his Oklahoma film. But again, the Bengals meet with him as well. Good safety valve kind of back in terms of getting out of the backfield, very shifty in the open field. Kind of get some Chase Brown vibes out of Jaden Ott. So that is pretty much all the meetings aside from the guys. We discussed a lot of these guys last week. They also met with Kalen Black. I think we talked about that last week as well out of Indiana. So there'll be plenty more. I think the Bengals have, I think to my count, about half of their top 30 visits left. This is the time, right? They're just going to be rolling and rolling. Caleb Downs has been very mouth shut about who he's visited with.
PR
I
train.
know at Ohio State's pro day. I don't know if I don't think we discussed this last week actually. But last week he was asked by a number of different outlets about a number of different teams, and he said no comment for all of them. So he like he was asked about the Bengals specifically, but he was asked about the Cowboys, he was asked about the Cardinals, he was asked about all these teams. And he has just said no comment to either of them. I wonder if it's probably an agent play, right? An agent trying to keep his quote unquote value hush hush a little bit. Um, but yeah, that's kind of all that is.
He's
Just
PR. He's PR trained. That's all it is. That's all it is. And listen, these guys want to go higher in the draft. The higher they go in the draft is the more money that they can make, you know? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And so, like, if you keep it a mystery and you keep all these things kind of close to the vest, and then teams aren't really sure about where other teams value you, then all of a sudden that's when teams sort of start to reach. So I don't know. Like, I think it's funny because like everybody keeps trying, and it's the same thing every time. But you have to ask the question, right? As a reporter, you and I both would know you have to ask, even if you probably know what the answer is, you still got to do it. But it's funny how committed to the bit he seems to be. But again, he's media trained, he's PR trained. He knows, sometimes no answer is the best answer.
yeah. And I just think, play the cards close to the chest, right? Keep the poker face, nothing wrong with it.
I could
So
go three. You don't know. You don't know that.
he
I could go
could,
three.
he could,
Yeah, right.
he could
That's kind
also go 20. Who
of,
knows, right?
yeah.
Doubt it,
That's
but who
what he's
knows?
sitting there thinking.
So.
Yep.
Um, let's do. You mentioned this before the show.
Oh yeah.
We'll discuss this now a little bit. So the Bengals have made a number of signings now. I think the one caveat I want to say to this is I think there's another answer I would like to accept here, and it's not on the team yet in terms of if it's a draft pick.
Okay.
But the question is, who is the most impactful player or signing that the Bengals have made so far in 2026? So Aiden, you were the one who brought this up to me. I thought it was a good concept, so I'll let you attack this first. I've got a couple thoughts as well, but I'll let you rip it first. So go ahead.
Sounds good. I'm gonna make my mamaw very happy. Because she is a diehard UC fan. So I'm gonna go with the
Mm.
UC alum. I just I think it's hard for me not to say Brian Cook just because of how bad Geno Stone was and how good Brian Cook is, but how bad Geno Stone was. So you go from literally like probably the worst starting safety in the league. I don't think that that's very debatable to somebody who is not that. But at the very least, not that. But at the very best, he's top of the market as far as that free agent signing. And I just think what he's able to do to transform that team just on the back end and I think his championship experience is important as well, especially as he comes in and mentors a guy like Jordan Battle. So I think he's going to be a guy who extremely elevates the floor of this defense. And I know that the positional value necessarily isn't there at the safety room, but I just think that what he's able to do for the floor of this defense is going to be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Brian Cook is just that a high level technical player, right? I think what is it? Three missed tackles in 4 years,
Mhm.
right? Just does the basics right and is also a high level player. Like he can make the really good plays too. I'm gonna give two kind of answers here. My first one is gonna be a guy that's on the team, and it's Boye Mafe. Um, I think when you lose a guy like Trey Hendrickson, right, who was a great player for the Bengals, had over 60 sacks in stripes. That is not something that you just snap your fingers and replace, right? Obviously, the Bengals have drafted in before Trey Hendrickson even left the team. They've drafted to try and alleviate this. Miles Murphy, who had 2.5 years of pretty middling to bad stuff, and then the back half of last year, we finally started to see the gears turn, and this is a monster prove it year for Miles Murphy coming up here in 2026. And now you've got Shamar Stewart, who is another kind of same vein as Murphy, where last year injuries and some struggles on the field, only one sack in his games, and he missed about half the season due to injury. So now you bring in Boye Mafe, who is somebody who is in a, it's almost like we talked about this a lot. It's almost the same signing that Hendrickson was, where it's a player who is kind of buried on a depth chart with a lot of really talented players in an edge rotation. Um, and the production dropped, but it wasn't because Mafe wasn't getting home. It's just because he wasn't getting the same snap share. He wasn't getting the same number of opportunities. So if he can be that true one at edge, right? All of a sudden, this Bengals D line looks a whole lot different because that opens up opportunities for Stewart. That opens up opportunities for Miles Murphy. That opens opportunities for Jonathan Allen, who is another new Bengal that's going to make a big impact, and BJ Hill on pass rushing downs. So again, I think Mafe is big. I think Mafe, they need him to be that 1A. They need him to be a top level edge rusher. They probably need 9+ sacks out of him this year, which is a high bar. But we've talked about this. His pass rush win rate is in the top 10 in the league. The underlying stats are very much there. It's the big number that the casuals look at, which is the sack number, that's not quite there. Bengals are betting on that catching up to what's lying underneath, which is, in my opinion, a pretty good bet. Then I think we talk. I say the two answers because I think that this 10th pick is one of the most consequential Bengals picks in recent memory. You have a top 10 pick. Those don't just come around, right? You're in a win now window with a great quarterback who has not very much shown it, but has to be frustrated with the way the last couple of seasons have gone.
He's
You've
shown it
got
a little bit.
He has shown it a little bit. You've got two receivers who are both very highly paid, who have won with this quarterback, who have been key parts of this team, who also are keen on winning. It's one in particular, no knock on T. Higgins, but you got one player in receiver or in particular who is hell-bent on winning, right? And you've got a team that is constructed on paper it's a pretty good football team on paper, but you can add a truly game-breaking talent in the top 10 picks, right? The Bengals cannot mess this pick up.
No.
You can't, right? And we've said like, it's tough to evaluate a pick right after it happens, and you kind of have to wait a couple of years. But, you know, there are so many good players at the top of this draft. I think that the Bengals, there's like we talked about it, it's not quite as elite talent-wise, but that top end is good enough where the Bengals, with the pick that they have, are going to get a good player who's going to contribute from day one. They can't blow this. You just can't.
I mean, they can,
Oh, they
but
can. They better not.
they can't. They've shown that they can, but yeah.
They have to get this pick right. And when I say get the pick right, there are a lot of good answers here. It doesn't just have to be one. I haven't fallen in love with one player, right? Like I haven't. There are a lot of good players in this draft that we've talked about that aren't going to be Bengals, but there are plenty of good ones that will hopefully be Bengals, right? They've got a lot of picks. So I will say that pick number 10, whoever it ends up being, and even if it's a player we don't initially like they have to pan out. Like, God forbid they take the kid from Auburn. I, he better be good. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man.
But I think again, Styles, Downs, either corner, either Love, Downs, Bailey, if somehow he's there.
I,
Bain. This is a long list, and
yeah.
they're all guys that could be there. I mean, how many players did I just mentioned? Downs, Styles, Bain, Bailey, Love. Um, like again, I get to like 7 or 8 players. The Bengals pick 10th. Like the likelihood that all of those guys come off the board is pretty low. So, you're gonna have a shot at getting a premier player who could contribute early. If they're listening, don't mess it up.
There's been a lot of smoke for Carnell Tate going early, by
Mm.
the way. That like
I
died
think
down
the
when
Browns at
he
6
split
just feels like an easy
and now it's like coming
tie-in.
back. So if you're the Bengals, you're rooting for that. You're like, yeah,
Yeah,
please.
I just look. I'm an Ohio State guy. I think Cardinal Tate's a great football player. I think he'd be a good fit for the Browns. They need that alpha, which Cardinal Tate really wasn't an alpha at Ohio State. He was just two because when you've got a guy like Jeremiah Smith on the outside, you're nobody's an alpha. So I think I would like that pick for the Browns. It would just be I think Tate would still have to take another step, which I think he's capable of doing, right hand up. So I think the Bengals would be looking for some linemen potentially to go. If somebody jumps up for a quarterback, you're jumping for joy. If somebody really falls in love with Ty Simpson, which there hasn't really been a lot of Ty Simpson smoke over the last couple of weeks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks into the first round. It would be late if
Yeah.
somebody wants that
Back
50-year
end. He's
option.
back end first round guy.
Yep. If somebody wants that 50-year option, I could see it. But I think that's the only quarterback that, besides Mendoza, of course, that goes in the first round. And then, yeah, I think from there, I think the Bengals I think there will be good options on the board. There will be guys that we've talked about over these last few weeks, and we will continue to talk about for these next couple of weeks that are going to be there at pick 10. And just don't blow it, right? Easy, easy, right? So.
You would hope. You would hope so.
So I think we will do a little bit deeper dives into some of these players next week, just because I think we'll save the mock draft for draft week, which will be in a few weeks. And then we will kind of talk a little bit about what some of these other teams are doing. We'll keep you updated on these visits, of course. They're going to keep rolling in over this kind of next week and a half is when a lot of these visits are going to come through. When's the draft start? 26th, so we're 20 days away.
Okay.
So it's going to be a pretty breakneck few weeks here. It's fun, though. This is a good time of year. We get to talk a lot of great college football, a lot of great prospects, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun evaluating some of these guys over these next few weeks. So that'll do it for this week's edition of the Jungle Fever Pod. For Aaron Crowley, I've been Ethan Sargent. We will see you next week. Talk a little bit more NFL draft. We'll see if the Bengals make any moves between now and then. But until then, have a great week. See you next time.